I'd like to go ahead and get the meeting started. I'm John Rattel. I'm the president of the Louisville Genealogical Society. We're looking forward to Melissa's presentation in a few minutes, but we're going to just have a short general board meeting. So I'd like to call that meeting to order now. We just completed a board meeting just prior to this, and we have minutes from that in the previous board meeting. Those minutes were provided to the general population. We approved those minutes during the board. So just for those who want to, general members who want to see the board minutes, they're available on our in the emails that went out. Is anything else we need to say on that, Nancy?
I think Howard's also posted the handout in the chat, and he'll probably post it again later on as we get started.
Okay, very good. Okay, the treasurer's report also was posted in the email. We looked at it and approved it during the board meeting. It is normal activity, and we have 323 members of the LGS. So we're delighted with that. And as we were talking just before, many of those members are coming from all over the country via the Zoom meetings. As far as announcements, wanted to let the general membership know that we have a slate of officers, potential officers for 2022. I would like to read those names. Susan Snyder put that together. She couldn't make it to this meeting, so I'm going to read them. For 2022, the president will be Jean Luer. The vice president will be Amy Wisowski. The recording secretary will be Donna Broster. The corresponding secretary will be Yvette Noseworthy. The treasurer is Maureen Fitzgerald, and the membership registrar is Amelia Orr DeBusman. We are always looking for additional members. So if there are people out in the general membership who would like to be considered for these positions, please contact Susan Snyder via the website or myself, and we will put you on the ballot, and then we will do a vote in November. So request anybody wants to volunteer to be one of the officers for next year, for the year 2022, please let us know. Are there any other announcements that we are, during the board meeting, we are looking at figuring out how best to use a combination of in-person meetings and Zoom meetings, and we're working through that. And as we move towards the new year, we'll get that out to the general membership. But please be aware that we are working on how best to do that. So I don't have any other general comments. Anybody else can think of anything? All right, I would like now to then pass this over to Nancy Roberson, who will introduce our guest speaker.
Thanks, John. I just want to thank everybody for attending today. We have Melissa Barker here from Tennessee, and I will introduce her in just a few minutes, but I do have a few announcements pertaining to our upcoming last two events for 2021. It seems like it's been a long year, but all of a sudden here we are at the end. On Tuesday, November 9th, and all these events you can see at our website. If you go to www.kylgs.org, you can find a list of our events and a couple others that are being held in the Kentucky area or the Louisville area. But on Tuesday, November 9th, you can register and join us on Zoom for a newcomer's perspective of Louisville, presented by Maggie Mendersky. And Maggie's going to discuss her first impressions as a newcomer to Louisville. She'll review the attributes of the city and its people, which have already greatly inspired her and guided the articles published in the Courier Journal and its parent publication, USA Today. So join us Tuesday, November 9th to listen to what a newcomer into Louisville thinks of our city. I think she's got some very positive comments to make. And then our last event of the year is Tuesday, December 14th. And this is when we usually hold our holiday luncheon. But due to COVID and due to the activities of 2021, we're going to Zoom our program that day at 1 o'clock. And Mick Sullivan is going to present The Incredible Kentuckians. He'll share through stories and song, hear the stories of lesser known Kentuckians who made a national, international, and intergalactical impact, and enjoy the live music as we explore the lives and contributions of Garrett Morgan, Lily Mae Ledford, and the Hill Sisters, and more. So it's going to be a little history, a little Kentucky trivia, and some music. So join us on December 14th for a real enlightening, delightful afternoon with Mick Sullivan. So that's our upcoming events, but we're in the midst of planning programs and workshops for 2022. So visit our website. We'll start posting those shortly, and you can start looking at what we've got coming up here the first of the year. But today we have Melissa Barker with us from Houston, Tennessee. I wasn't sure where Houston was. Melissa and I were discussing it as she came on board here a little bit ago. And Houston is in northwestern central Tennessee, over near, everybody in Kentucky knows where those Kentucky Lake region is, not quite as far as those Kentucky Lakes, and only one county south of Kentucky. So she's real close to our Kentucky border over there. But Melissa is a certified archives manager and public historian, currently working at the Houston County, Tennessee Archives. And the county seat for Houston is a little town called Aaron, Tennessee. So if go to their website, it's a very interesting website with some very beautiful pictures of what this area looks like. Melissa is affectionately known as the archive lady to the genealogy community. She lectures and teaches and writes about genealogy research, the genealogy research process, researching in archives and record preservation. She conducts virtual presentations all across the United States. She writes a popular blog entitled A Genealogist in the Archives, and is a well-known published book reviewer. She writes a bi-weekly advice column, she's a very busy lady, entitled The Archive Lady, published at the Genealogy Bargains. She writes history pieces for her local newspaper, the Houston County Herald, and in it, she writes an article called From the Archives. She has been a professional genealogist for the past 16 years with expertise in Tennessee records, but she also noted to me she does Kentucky also, and she is currently taking research clients. She has been researching her own family history for the past 30 years. So we welcome you, Melissa, today, and welcome your topic on researching in libraries and archives, the do's and don'ts. I'm going to hand it over to you, Melissa.
Thank you, Nancy. I appreciate it. Thank you all for having me today. And I'm going to share my screen. Let's see if we got that. And I'm going to minimize the stuff that's on the side here.
Oh, Melissa, I need to just insert Q&A. If you have any questions, I should have done this before I handed it over to you. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Any questions during the presentation, if you use a Q in the chat and then put your question, we will field those questions at the end of her presentation. Okay, Melissa, I'm sorry.
That's perfectly fine. Yes, I'll be glad to stick around for any questions that you might have. So today I'm going to talk about researching in library and archives, the do's and don'ts. Some of these you're probably going to be real familiar with, and you probably have heard them. Other people speak about them. And I think some of you might be surprised of what I've come up with. I was a genealogist for 20 years before I became an archivist. In 2010, our county never had an archives. We were established in 1871, and our records had never been archived, never been organized, nothing. And so I had a local lady who was writing her family history, and specifically she was writing about a murder. Her grandfather had been murdered on the streets of Aaron, Tennessee in 1921. And she could actually see the court records on microfilm at the local library, but she wanted to see the actual records and hold them. So she was trying to figure out where those were. And she was told that they were in the basement of the courthouse in the records vault. So she went down there, and when she opened the door, because the records vault door was unlocked for anyone to go in and do whatever, and she found that the records vault was packed to the ceiling and to the door, could not even get in it. So she asked the county government if she and some of her other historical friends could clean out the records vault, organize it so that it would be better to get to the records. And so she got together some other historical members, and actually the local librarian called me and said that they were going to do this project. This would have been August of 2010, and asked if I would be interested. And, you know, I almost said no, because I already had enough on my plate. I was working with clients, doing my own research and things like that. But I thought, you know, well, it's just for a day, you know, and so I thought, well, I'll help out and see how this goes. So we met in August of 2010. We started pulling out boxes of records. There was torn boxes, records on the floor. We found some old Christmas decorations in there. We even found some unspent ammunition in there. And so we were really working hard and trying to get these records organized. Took a break for lunch. While we were at lunch, we all agreed we needed a county archive in the worst way. And then the next question was, who's going to head this up? And of course, we all sat on our hands. Nobody wanted to venture into doing something like that. But they looked at me and they said, Melissa, you do genealogy research. Why don't you do this? And I said, I'm not an archivist. I have known nothing about being an archivist. I research the records. I don't archive the records. But they kept encouraging me, and I reached out to our Tennessee State Library and Archives, and we are very fortunate here in the state of Tennessee that the TSLA offers a 3-year program called Archives Institute, and they train their county archivists to be certified archive managers. So I went through that course and became our very first county archivist. So I'm very proud of that. We've been in archives now for 10 years, and we've made a lot of strides in records management. And actually, we in our county, we don't have any other repository that keeps historical or genealogical records. So not only does our county archive take care of the government records, but we also accept donations of historical and genealogical records. So our mission is to save and preserve our history. So let's get started with this one, researching in libraries and archives, the do's and don'ts. One of the things I always like to hit genealogists with very first is about the amount of records that are online. Even as a genealogist, I knew this because I was working in archives and libraries and courthouses everywhere, and I knew this. But as an archivist, I realized when I started working with genealogists on that aspect, many genealogists think that everything's online. And it's not. In fact, there is a very small percentage of records that are online. I've seen statistics that say that less than 10% of records are online, but I actually believe that that statistic is more like 5% or less. When you start looking at archives, and they're all over the United States, they're all over Canada, Europe, the world. When you take all that in consideration, you think about it, the majority of our records are still sitting in archives on shelves. They're not microfilmed, they're not digitized, they're not online anywhere. And so I'm hoping that genealogists will realize this and know that they need to be working with these repositories and the records that are laying and sitting in them. You know, it's great to do work online, it's great to do research, and there are records coming online every single day, tons of them. But still, the records that we need to find as genealogists are still sitting in archives. So I teach genealogists to ask the question when you're researching in a particular area, whether it's a new area to you or one you've been doing research in for a while, ask yourself the question, where are the records? The reason I say this is because I don't tell people to go to the archive, because the building where the records may be located may not have the word archive on the building, or may not have the word archive in the title of who they are. But they preserve records, they collect records, they store records, and they are an archive. And so ask yourself, where are the records? And then start asking people in the area where you're doing research, where are the records? And so some of the places that we should know where some of these records are going to be located is, one of them are libraries, our local public libraries. I find genealogists sometimes use them just to check out a book, but many of our local public libraries are archives. They're institutions that have records, that preserve records, and they are historical and genealogical records. Now, whether that is in a totally separate room that they call a genealogy room or a research room, or if that's just a one shelf filled with local history books about the local area. Our local public libraries are an asset to us as genealogists, and we should be using them. Many libraries, that's where you're going to find the microfilm records and the microfilm readers. Also at libraries, you're going to be able to find where they have computers. And also if you get a library card from a particular library, they may have databases such as ancestry.com, Fold3, newspapers.com that you can access from home with your library card number. And so our local public libraries are institutions, are records repositories that we should be supporting and using on a daily basis. So another place where records are located are in archives. There are many different kinds of archives. I like to say there's archives out there for everything, and literally there is. But there are different kinds of archives. There are county archives, like where I work. Not every county has a county archives. I'm very proud of the state of Tennessee in that of the 95 counties we have, there are about 92 of them or 93 of them that have county archives. The Tennessee State Library and Archives has worked very diligently to help each and every county try to establish an archive. Now it's up to the local government to actually establish the archive, but the TSLA does offer a lot of support. They helped me and when we were trying to get our archive up and running. And so in Tennessee, I can tell you that most of the counties have county archives, but there are other types of archives in a particular area. Another place you need to be looking are the courthouses. This is actually a photo of the courthouse where I live, and it's not on this left side, but on the right side in the basement is where our archives is located. They always put the archives in the basements, don't they? But this is where you're going to find records too. A lot of times the records have not been transferred to an archive or another place to be preserved. They're still located where those records were generated, and that's in the county courthouse. Now, one thing about working with county courthouse staff, and I work in a county courthouse, so I can say this, they are about doing the business of today. The clerks, the elected officials that are working in these courthouses and have these records, they're doing the business of today. That is what they're tasked with every single day. And so for us genealogists to walk in their office and say, I want everything for the Smith family back to 1825, you're not going to get a lot of help. They're going to look at you like, I've got a lot to do today, and this is stuff that is due today. And so it's important that you maybe even call ahead or email, let them know maybe you're coming, maybe even work with them through email or phone calls, because that will give them time to look for the records. Give them time to find the records. Many times these records are being stored in a different building off of the courthouse site, so they have to actually retrieve them. Another thing to keep in mind is that when you talk to these clerks and these officials, many times they've not been working in their jobs for very long. Maybe they just got elected, maybe they've just been hired, or maybe they haven't kept up with where all the records are located. So they may tell you, oh, I don't know where those records are, or I think they've been thrown away, or I think our courthouse burned in 1875 and we don't have those records anymore. I'm not saying that they're lying. All I'm saying is that you may not want to believe them right off the bat. I've had several instances where I've had officials tell me those records don't exist anymore. I was able to find them someplace in a different building with a different office, or at a local archive, historical society, or maybe even transferred to the state archive level. And so don't believe them at first that those records literally do not exist until you can prove it for yourself. So you've got libraries, you've got archives, courthouses, genealogical societies, and historical societies can be a type of archive. If they have a building with records that they're preserving, they're accepting donations of records, they are a type of archive. Anywhere in any place that records are being preserved, collected, and stored is an archive. And so if you are working in an area and there is a genealogical society or historical society, and sometimes they combine them, and you might have a local historical genealogical society, check to see if they have records. Do they have, you know, a little area in a building? Do they have a building of their own? A lot of these societies will actually get donated to them a local home, an old historic home, and they'll take that home and they'll turn it into their facility. And so look to these societies for these records. Another reason to look to genealogical and historical societies is not necessarily for records if they don't have any, but for knowledge. Many of the members of these societies were born and raised in the area. They have been there, their family's been there for generations. And so it's really a good thing to talk to them about local history, some of the local families maybe you're researching. I know in our historical society, we don't have a building. We don't collect, they don't collect records, but the knowledge that each of those members have is invaluable. And so that's something that as genealogists, we should be tapping into. Another type of archiving where you may find records are at museums. I actually came to the idea of using museums as a research place kind of late. I didn't think about them having records maybe I could research in. As you know, when you go to museums, you see the exhibits and displays, but museums have back rooms just like archives do. And on those back rooms, they have shelves full of boxes full of records. Now, it might be a little more difficult to actually gain access to records at a museum. Museum curators are a little bit more protective of their records. And so you may have to ask or show some really good interest in those records. You may have to, you know, form a relationship with the museum curator, let them know you're serious about your research, who you're researching, and what kind of information you're looking for. Be specific as you can, because they may not just open the doors for you and let you do research in their records, but they have them. And so maybe you can talk to them. Maybe they will share with you what they have. I like to say that if you're looking at a museum and there are old Civil War letters on display, there's probably more where those came from. Or if there are some local photographs on display for a particular exhibit, they probably have more photographs where those came from. And so that's why it's important to work with museums as an archive as well. University libraries and archives. I find genealogists tend to not look to these for their own family records. Believe it or not, university and libraries and archives on campuses of our colleges and universities can have family records. They can also have local historical records. You have to think about these universities and colleges, they're part of the community. And many times there's no place else for these records to go at the time. And so they end up at these colleges and universities. I live not too far from Austin Peay State University in Clarksville, Tennessee, and they have a fantastic archive and library on their campus. And I know for a fact that they have at least 2 diaries for young girls from the Civil War era, because one of the professors there, a friend of mine, Professor Manoa Uffelman, actually has edited 2 books from those diaries, and they are located there on campus in an archive. And so that's why we need to be using university library and archives for our own genealogy research. So let's get to the do's and don'ts. We're going to do the do's first. So first and foremost, I would encourage you, before you walk out the door, before you get in your car, before you go to any repository, to check the archives website. In this day and time, I can remember a time back in the 90s when a lot of our archives, libraries, a lot of these places that had records, they didn't even have a website. They had hardly any web presence at all. Well, it's 2021, and while it's been known that a lot of our archives kind of stay behind a little bit, they are catching up. And so many of these archives do have a website. They have a web presence. They're on social media. They are finally waking up to the point that if you want people to use your repositories and come research in your records, you're going to have to put it out there what you have. And so look to see if wherever you're wanting to do research has a website. This is actually a screenshot from the Tennessee State Library and Archives website. lot of our state archives, local county archives, historical and genealogical societies, and museums will have a website. Maybe they're on Facebook, or they put their photographs on Flickr. A lot of our archives are uploading a lot of their photograph collections to Flickr. And so look there. They're on Twitter, they're on Instagram. I know a local Montgomery County, Tennessee, which is right on the border of Kentucky. They use Instagram to put a lot of their information on. So go looking for these websites and social media pages for these archives, and then talk to them through their website, through social media. Talk to them about your family, talk to them about the records you're looking for, and try to do a lot of the legwork without actually having to do the legwork. I'm all about going to these repositories and digging into the records, but if you can handle a lot of it from home, do that, because it just saves you time and effort. And I think that sometimes you can get a better response from an archivist or someone at a repository. And so check those websites and social media pages. Look for some contact information on the website. Who do you want to contact? Find an email, find an online form. A lot of times they'll have those online forms to contact the repository. Even a mailing address. I've still been known to actually type up a letter and send it in the actual mail. I still do that every once in a while. And then look for their social media accounts. Look for their Facebook links, look for their Twitter links, Instagram, Flickr, things like that, because you can go there and maybe find records before you even actually go to the repository. Look for that physical address and directions to the facility. Don't just think that you're going to go ahead and just drive there and you'll find it and everything's good. A lot of times, I know that the Tennessee State Library and Archives, I'm going to talk about them here in just a second. They just moved into a new building in April. They are no longer at their old address. And so if you're used to going to an old address, check to see if maybe that they haven't moved. Check to see if maybe they're not having some sort of work done at their building, and so they've moved their facility somewhere else. Always check everything before you go, because you don't want to show up and you can't do the research you want to do. Also look for digitized and index records on their website. These sometimes cannot be that easy to find on an archives website. I'm not sure why we as archivists make it difficult to find things on websites, but we do. A lot of times it's because we have so much we have on our websites that everything is just buried. And so click through everything trying to find digitized records or indexed records. If you can find those records that are indexed, that will actually save you time. You won't have to look through some records that are already indexed and you can tell that your family's not in there. And digitized records, a lot of our archives, especially right now during COVID, they have started digitizing a lot of records. You have to understand something about archives. As archivists, we have to report to the officials that are over us, whoever that may be, especially these ones that are holding our purse strings, that are giving us our budget monies. And we have to report to them a lot of statistics. Who has visited our archives, who has contacted us by email, who has contacted us by phone, who is using our website. We keep these statistics on a daily basis. And if we can't show that our records are being used, then we could face budget cuts. And so that's why a lot of our archives right now, and especially during COVID, because a lot of our archives have been shut down, but our archivists have actually either been working in the facility with no one allowed to come in, or they've been working from home. And what have they been doing? They've been indexing records, they've been digitizing records, and they have been processing a lot of records. And so as we come out of COVID and as our facilities start opening back up, you're going to find there's going to be a lot more records that are digitized and online, that are indexed and that have been processed. So if you've been to a particular repository's website and you haven't been there in a while, I'd suggest you go back and look to see if they have anything new, and also contact them, talk to them and say, what new records have you processed? What new indexes do you have? What new records have you digitized? They will be glad to tell you. And so don't think that once you've been to a particular place that you've looked through all the records and it's done. They're always getting records donated and they're always getting records processed. So next we want to plan ahead, call or email. This is very important, and many of you probably already know this, but you don't want to show up at a particular facility and find that they're closed because they're having everything painted today. Because you've been on their website and it says they're supposed to be open today between 8 and 4, but they didn't put it on their website that they were painting the facility on the inside, and so you didn't know they were going to be closed. So make sure, call ahead, send them an email, let them know you're coming. Another thing that I encourage genealogists to do, and not to give the repository your 3-hour speech about your family, but kind of let them know what records you're looking for. Be as specific as you possibly can. And what may happen, it doesn't happen every time, but what may happen is the archivist may actually pull those records for you, and they're waiting for you when you get there. I have done this many, many times when I know a particular genealogist is coming. They've told me about their family. They told me about some specific information or records they're looking for, and they're going to come next week. Well, between now and then, I will start looking at some of our collections to see, is there something here that might help them? And so I'll start pulling some stuff. And when they get there, I'll say, here, this is some of the stuff that I've pulled that may be of interest to you. And I find that genealogists are very appreciative of that. Now, not every repository is going to do that for you, but they may know of some records and can have them ready for you. So call and email. This also gets you to start a relationship with that facility, with a particular archivist. It's always great to have a point of contact. Reason being is because it's great for when you get there, you can put a face with a name. And then once you leave, you'll still have that point of contact if you have forgotten to look for something, or if what records you found at the repository, you want something else and you can't get there, you might can contact them and you can ask for a specific person who helped you already. So you want to find out the facility's days and hours of operation, which is very important because it could change at a moment's notice. You just never know. Do they require you to make an appointment? Now, this is something that before COVID, I would have told you that not a whole lot of repositories do this. But since COVID, I can tell you that talking to all of my archivist friends, they have really enjoyed the fact as they started to open up, they would make their hours by appointment only because they only wanted so many people in the building to social distance. Well, they have found that they really like this by appointment only thing. And so I can tell you that a lot of our repositories are going to start going to by appointment only because they like the concept. They like to be able to be prepared for when the researcher comes. You can still be able to walk in there and do some research just stopping by. But for any kind of serious research, in-depth research, they're probably going to ask you to make an appointment. So find out wherever you're wanting to do research is if they're going to require you to have an appointment. This is kind of an important question too. Are the records you're looking for, are they even at the facility where you're going to do research? You may find that those particular records were moved to a different archive for whatever reason. And so make sure that the records you're looking for are actually at the facility before you go there, because you don't want to have to go there and then try to figure out, well, where are they located? And then you have to drive around and try to find them. Next is do ask about parking. This one I put in here because I find that a lot of genealogists get surprised by the parking situation when they get to a particular archive. And so don't be surprised by parking. Many of our facilities are in downtown metropolitan areas. Some of our facilities are in places where the parking can be kind of horrendous. So ask about parking, and especially if you have a disability or if you have problems walking for a long distance, because you don't want to find that you've got to park further away than you would like or that you can handle and have to walk. So most researchers, they kind of forget about the parking. So ask about that before you go. Some repositories do have limited parking at the facility itself. Now, there may be parking garages down the road or the couple of streets over, but you don't want to get there and find that out and then find out, oh, I'm going to have to walk all this way and back. And so find out this before you go. Nearby parking garages, parking lots, parking meters, you need to be prepared to pay. I can tell you before the Tennessee State Library and Archives actually moved, I had to park in a parking garage. You'll see in a minute that they had very little parking. That parking garage was free. However, the walk to the TSLA was uphill. It was a very steep hill. It's in downtown Nashville. And so you need to know those things. Again, if you have a disability or if you just can't walk very far, it's just not good for you, then you need to get accommodations, maybe for parking close to the building with someone who has disabilities or needs to be parking close to the building because of your limitations. This is a photograph of the Tennessee State Library and Archives from 1953. This photo was taken just soon after this building was built. This building is on 7th Avenue in downtown Nashville. I call it my home away from home because working with clients, this is where I do most of my research. And also this is where I attended the Archives Institute for 3 years to become an archivist. But the two red arrows there on the right, their parking at this facility, there was maybe maximum 15 parking places. In the front, there was maybe 10 there in the front. And then on the side over there, there was another 5. So they had very limited parking. My husband was an insurance adjuster, so he did a lot of work in Nashville. And so he would just drop me off. I wouldn't have to park. And so I would work that out on days when he was going to be heading to Nashville. The red arrow there on the left pointing to the top floor of this building, I just wanted to share with you that when I was attending the Archives Institute, one of the things that we got to do in class was work on the Tennessee Supreme Court records. Now, when I say work on them, I mean we got to flatten them, unfold them, clean them, and get them ready for researchers. And so one day they asked us if we would like to take a tour of where these records are stored. And of course, we all wanted to. So they put us on the elevator. We go all the way to the top floor. When the elevator opened and we stepped out, as far as our eye could see, all we saw were shelves full of boxes, and it was all the Tennessee Supreme Court records. They were stored in this top floor and in another building because there were so many they couldn't hold them. So that was a very, very interesting experience for me. And so this old building, which they are no longer in this building, had very limited parking. This is the new Tennessee State Library and Archives. And if you ever get a chance to come to Tennessee, I would encourage you to go and visit the state-of-the-art state archives. It is absolutely magnificent. They opened in April of 2021. The one thing that all of us genealogists are extremely excited about is the fact that there is an underground garage, parking garage. There's 150 parking spaces. So we were all very more excited about that than a lot of the records about having that wonderful parking. Next is do ask about using electronics. You need to find out what you can use in the archives you're going to, because every single archive is different in what they allow and what they don't allow. And so asking about it ahead of time and being prepared will keep you from having to figure out what to do with what you brought with you. Because not every archive has a locker for you to put stuff in. So ask them if you can bring your iPhone and your iPad for taking photos. Some will allow it, some will actually forbid it. And so you need to find that out. Laptop computers, are you allowed to bring them in? Do you have a place to plug them in if your battery's going down? Check on all these things. You want to be as prepared as possible. How about handheld scanners? A lot of our archives, that's how they make their revenues, off of copy fees. And so they may not allow you to bring in a scanner or your phone to take photos because they want you to pay for those copies. The revenue that these archives make, a lot of times, that's what makes up their budget. And so you want them to be able to have their budget so they can continue to be open. But find out what you can bring. Thumb drives. Many of our wonderful new microfilm machines, what I call the newfangled ones, because I can remember the old ones where you had to crank them. But the new ones, they're hooked up to computers now, and you can use thumb drives to download your images that you find on microfilm. So ask if you can use thumb drives. And do ask about copy fees. Believe it or not, there are still many of our archives and repositories, libraries, museums, universities and colleges, state archives, historical societies, and genealogical societies that still ask for cash copy fees. And so I can remember the day when I would go to an archive with my roll of quarters and to feed, I would say, feed the machine, feed that microfilm machine to get records. And so if you need to bring cash, and if they, if it's a quarter machine or whatever, you need to make sure you have the proper cash with you. Now, there are some facilities that have cash machines or change machines where you can put money in and get change. But I have been to some of those where they had those machines and for some reason they were out of the change. And so I was not able to get change. So just come prepared and bring the cash that you need with you. Again, most repositories charge copy fees for photocopies or microfilm readers. There are some that don't. There are some that will allow you to copy what you want, but a lot of them use this for their revenue. And so be prepared for that. Find out what the fees are so you're not shocked and surprised once you get there. Bring correct change. That's always important. Next is to make a to-do list. This helps me a lot. And I'll tell you, I never used to do this up to a certain point. I thought I could keep it all in my head. I could remember it. But the older I got, the more I found I needed a to-do list. And so whether you use a piece of paper and a pencil or your phone, but remember, if they won't let you bring your phone in, then you may need pencil and paper. Make up a to-do list. Do a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 list of what you want to accomplish when you get there. Most important, of course, is 1, and then 2, 3, 4, 5. And don't be concerned that when you leave, you haven't completed your list. But doing a to-do list will keep you more focused. It will keep you from becoming overwhelmed. Sometimes I've walked in facilities where there is just so much to see and so much to take in that I have become overwhelmed, and then I've just totally forgotten what I was there for. And so having a to-do list that you can look at, that you can focus yourself, I think you'll be more successful with your research. Be as specific as you can on your own to-do list. Now, I tell you to be as specific as you can when you're making requests from archivists or from anyone you're asking records of. But be specific on your to-do list. I think you'll be able to to tick off and accomplish more if you do that. Try to stick to your to-do list because try not to chase after those BSOs or bright shiny objects, those things that we see that makes us take our attention off of what we were there to do. Now, I understand a lot of times we find things that were not on our to-do list, but they have to do with our family. Make a copy of it and move on, or make a note of it and move on, but try to do and stick to your to-do list. Next, we're going to talk about some records. This isn't just all semantics. This is some records that I feel that genealogists don't ask about, don't know about, or are kind of intimidated by. And so one of the first ones is to ask about vertical files. Sometimes these are called subject files, and sometimes they're called morgue files. These are records that are usually not in the research area where you sit at the tables and chairs. They're usually behind closed doors. So you'll need to ask about them. You can ask for an index to vertical files, but these are fantastic records. They are records that are usually in file folders and then stored in filing cabinets. They're arranged by surname or subject name. So that's why if you get an index, you can look for your surnames. If you're looking for information on a particular local school your ancestor went to, a church, or a particular business, you can look for that because they'll be listed by subject in the index. This is where you're going to find things like newspaper clippings, family histories, business letterheads. You might find copies of family Bible pages in vertical files. Many archives their vertical files are completely and totally nothing but newspaper clippings or obituaries. So that's a great place to find those. I like to say the vertical files are kind of like a box of chocolates. You just never know what you're going to find when you open up that file on a particular surname, a particular subject. This is a place where archivists put a lot of the things that don't go into a larger collection. And so a lot of times people will come into archive and they'll have a couple of newspaper clippings, they'll have a couple of business things, documents, and it doesn't make up a huge collection. And so we as archivists will place these in our vertical files. I want to go back real quick This is a drawer in our one of our vertical files in the Houston County, Tennessee archives. We are up to 4 filing cabinets now of vertical files. And so we put a lot of things in our vertical files, and they have helped a lot of researchers. So if you're not using this record source, I would put it on your to-do list. So let me go ahead to the next one. The next one is Manuscript Collections. This is my opinion, but I believe that Manuscript Collections are one of the #1 underused records collections that genealogists just do not use. In Europe and in Canada, these collections are called Fons collections. So if you're have been able to cross the pond, or if you have ancestors in Canada, you want to look for Fons collections. This is an example of a manuscript collection on the shelf in the Houston County, Tennessee archives. Manuscript collections, I think, are the most important records collections for any genealogist or any kind of researcher to seek out and use. I have found more information about my ancestors in manuscript collections than I have any other records collection. They're very valuable and useful to us as genealogists. You are going to want to ask the archivist or whoever is over the collections for an index to the manuscript finding aids. And in the index, you're going to see the names listed as things like the John Smith papers, 1648, 1772. And so that's what's going to look like in the index. But the finding aid is what you're going to want to look for. The finding aid is what I call the roadmap to every collection. The finding aid is going to give you a box by box, folder by folder listing of what is contained in the collection. So for instance, you could have box 1, folder 3, correspondence 1762 to 1772. And if it's that particular time, if it's the right family, then you would want to have this particular folder pulled and brought to you so you could look through it. People ask me all the time, how do you describe a manuscript collection to the lay person, to someone who just has no idea what it is? And so this is how I describe it. I want you to think about all of the genealogical records that you have in your possession right now. Your census records, your vital records, your original photographs, grandma's quilt, the family Bible, anything and everything that has to do with family history or genealogy. So in your mind, I want you to take all of that stuff and put it in boxes. Take those boxes out to your car, put them in the trunk, and then drive down to the local archive and donate it. That is a manuscript collection. So that tells you right there that literally anything could be in a manuscript collection. That's where you're going to find the diaries, the scrapbooks, the store ledgers, things like that, and original Civil War letters. I absolutely love manuscript collections. Next, do ask the archivist about other repositories. Remember I said to try to find where are the records. Well, if you're talking at your particular archives or at the Historical Society, they may not be the only one in the area. Now, in my case, here in Houston County, Tennessee, our county archives is the only place that is collecting and preserving historical and genealogical records. But in other areas, there may be other places where there's records. So talk to them about where are other records. They're going to know because they get that question all the time. This is actually a photograph at the Stewart County, Tennessee archives. Stewart County is actually on the border of Kentucky. This is where the Battle of Fort Donelson, the Fort Donelson battlefield is located, which is about 20 minutes from me. And so I know that Houston County was formed in 1871 from parts of Stewart County. And so when I have a researcher that has gone back far enough past 1871, and if they're on that end of the county where Stewart County used to be, then that's where I'll send them. I'll send them to the Stewart County archives because that's probably where they need to go to find records. So ask about other repositories. Again, sometimes there's more than one facility that holds historical and genealogical records in the area, especially in large metropolitan areas, urban areas. There's going to be more than one place where there's going to be records. If you can't find the records that you're looking for, ask the archivist where they might be found. I've also been known to ask the Chamber of Commerce. I've also been known to talk to the Historical Society members. I've also been known to ask who was the oldest person in the city or in the community who was born and is raised here, and they still have their faculties. And I've been known to call them up and say, hey, I'm trying to find these records. Do you know if maybe they've been stuck somewhere? And a couple of times I've been told, yeah, they're being stored over here in this old storage building, or they're in the basement of the courthouse, and nobody in the courthouse knows that they're in the basement of the courthouse. And so you have to be a pretty good sleuth to actually find the records before you can actually do research in them. Again, most archivists, genealogical society members, historical society members, they're well versed about where the records are and even if they exist. Because a lot of times from people who don't do this on a regular basis, they may tell you, oh, I think there was a courthouse fire and everything was burned. And so a case in point is that Stewart County Archives I just showed you a photograph of, where the Battle of Fort Donelson took place. Their courthouse did catch on fire and was burned to the ground in 1862 during the battle. But what a lot of people don't know is that the Union, just before they were going to burn the courthouse, the community members begged them to please let us get our records out of the courthouse, and then you can do whatever you want to. And they did. The Union let them get their records out. They stored them in an old cave, and then the Union burned the courthouse. Well, many researchers think, well, because the courthouse has been burned, there are no records that survived before 1862. And in reality, the Stewart County Archives has records dating back to 1803 when the county was formed. And so don't always believe the story that the courthouse was burned and all the records are gone. Do cite your sources before you leave. This is extremely important as well. Write down that source, where you found that information, where you copied that document out of. Cite those sources, because when you get home, if for some reason you didn't get all the pages you needed, or you don't know where you got this from, you'll be glad you wrote those sources down. It can be a bit tedious, and it's going to take us some time while you're at the facility, but I see it as a necessary task and something for my sanity. When I get home, I know where I got the information. Record the source information before you leave the repository. You'll be so glad that you did. If you need help with citing your sources, Elizabeth Shawn Mills has got a wonderful book out, Evidence Explained. She's actually in her 3rd edition. It's not a book you're going to sit down and read like a novel, but it is a fantastic reference book to use for sources. So now we're going to talk about some don'ts. I don't have a whole lot of don'ts, and they're not really negative don'ts, but ones that we should look at. As you can see, I actually put a do in with the don'ts. Don't forget to plan ahead, call or email. I find this very, very important. As a genealogist and as an archivist, I very much appreciate it as an archivist when researchers call ahead, let me know they're coming, kind of let me know what they're going to be looking at, so I can be prepared. So call or email that repository, talk about them, about the days and hours of operation and some of their records. Don't be surprised if they want to search your belongings. Many of our archives have a system where you come in and they search your belongings when you come in, and they search your belongings when you leave. Don't be surprised by that. Don't think that they're singling you out. They do it to everybody. And so don't be surprised. They routinely search purses, bags, backpacks, and other belongings. So don't be alarmed by that. Again, they will search your belongings when you come in, and they will probably search them when you leave. And so it's just what they do on a daily basis. Believe it or not, documents go missing in archives all the time, whether on purpose or not on purpose. Sometimes maybe we just pick something up with our notebook and put it in our bag and didn't realize we had done it. And so just let them search your things. Don't take anything in with you that you don't want them to look at. I always use a special bag when I go to a repository so that It's not something that there's personal stuff in there. I just take that bag in. They're welcome to look through all through if they want to. And I don't feel like they're looking at something personal. Don't be surprised if you have to put your things in a locker. Many of our repositories have lockers available, and they require you to put things in this locker. Everything usually except for your pad of paper and a pencil, and sometimes not the pencil. Some repositories are very strict. And so they will give you the ability to lock up your belongings so that they're safe and only you can get to them. They do require you to do this on some places. I don't require it where I'm at because we are a very small archive and I can see each and every researcher that is there, so I can actually keep a good eye on them. But they have these lockers available, and I actually prefer them because I don't have to lug everything around with me. I can put it in the locker, take with me my research, what I need, and I'm free to do my research. You should be allowed to bring in whatever research papers that you have, a notepad and a pencil into the research area. But again, they may not want you to bring the pencil in. They may supply you with a pencil. They may even supply you with a notepad, but they should let you bring in your research. And don't worry, your belongings are safe. I've never had any problem with putting my things in a locker. Usually there's some sort of a lock on it that only I can get to, or one of the officials can if something were to happen, but nobody else should be able to get into your locker. Don't be surprised if you're asked to wear gloves. This is a question I get all the time of being an archivist. They may ask you to put on gloves whenever you are going to handle photographs. The thing is now, it's kind of like the egg question every year when it comes to wearing gloves. They used to go back and forth about it, but now the thinking is that we should only wear gloves when we handle photographs because the oils in the dirt, no matter how clean your hands are, can't transfer to those photographs. And over time, as they're handled, they can become damaged. The reason that we advise not to wear gloves with anything else is because if you are wearing gloves and you handle delicate documents, you lose the textile sensation in the tips of your fingers and you cannot feel how you were handling those documents. And so you could actually damage them because you can't feel them. And so normally we just ask you to wear gloves when you want to handle some photographs. And a lot of times these photographs are in archival sleeves. And so then they may not even ask you to wear gloves at all because they are protected in those sleeves. So if they ask you to wear gloves, then just put on those gloves and use them. Maybe even bring your own gloves with you if you want to. And so the photographs can, over time, if they're handled, they can become damaged. A bonus is you may get to keep those gloves. A lot of times they don't want those gloves back. They're disposable or something, and so they'll just let you have them. I actually take a couple of pair of gloves with me when I go researching in case I have to use them. I just like having my own. So you can throw a couple in your bag whenever you go. Don't share all of your family history with the archivist. This is one that I actually love hearing the stories of family history, but it's time consuming. And, archivists, librarians, all of those people that are working at these facilities, they're working with several people at one time. And so tell them specifically what you're looking for, what records you want, and they can better help you. So be specific with what records you want so that they can direct you quickly and easily to the records. And please don't say, I want copies of everything for the Smith family or whatever the family name that you have, because that does not help us at all. We understand you're excited to be there. You want to get everything for that family that is in that archive. We get it. But you need to start and be specific with whatever you're looking for with your request, and then move to the next thing and then to the next thing. Just asking for copies of everything. We have no idea where your family, what records they're going to be in. And so that's what you're there for. You're the researcher. Many times archives will not do the research for you. They will only pull records for you. And so we need to be prepared to do the research ourselves. Unfortunately, many of our archivists are not professional genealogists. I'm kind of a rarity in that I'm an archivist and a professional genealogist. They are there to help you find the records you're looking for. One thing I like to say is that I wish that all archivists were genealogists, and I also wish all genealogists were archivists, because I think that we would understand each other a little bit better when it comes to trying to do research. But just remember, they're not professional genealogists. They're there to help you find the records. And I'll also tell you too that a lot of our archivists are not the local historian. One of the things that I find is that many of the archivists know the records that they have, but they may not know the histories of everything in the area. And so it's important that you don't rely on them for those histories, that you seek out the local county or local historian, or talk to the historical and genealogical societies. Don't expect to find all the records collections indexed. I think this is probably one that we all should understand, because there's even record databases online, like at Ancestry or Family Search, that are not indexed. And so that's the same way at an archive. You may have to read through records. You may have to go page by page to look through the records. And so don't expect them to be indexed. This is an example of the circuit court loose records, the criminal records, part of the index from our archives in Houston County. Archivists are always diligently trying to index, but they have so many records, not everything can get indexed. Ask about index collections. They may have a lot of their collections indexed. Those indexes may be in a paper form, or they may be on the in-house computer. They may put you on the computer and say all of our indexes are right here. And it could save you a lot of time if you find some records that are already indexed. And keep in mind that not all records have been indexed. And also keep in mind that they may not be in every name index. Let me go back to this index here. This is the circuit court loose criminal records. We index this by the defendant because it's usually state versus. And so it's indexed by the defendant. That doesn't mean that every person that is mentioned in the court case has been indexed. So that's something to think about. Most indexes are not an every name index. Indexing is very time consuming for archivists or whoever are doing these records. And so some repositories just don't have the staff or the time to complete a lot of indexing projects. And so try to be mindful of that. This one I find that genealogists kind of scratch their heads when I bring it up. Don't rearrange the order of the documents. This is actually a vertical file for the McKinnon family. And usually in vertical files, the documents that are in there are not in any particular order. However, if you have a court case file or a probate file, those records may be in a particular order, especially if you're working with manuscript collections and you have a box of records brought to you from that manuscript collection, and you pull a particular file, and in that file, there are Civil War letters. Those Civil War letters may be in that file chronologically. That's how they want them archived. And so we just need to be mindful that we kind of, as we look at things, that we just look at the document, turn it over, look at the next document, and try to keep things in as the original order as they were brought to you. So yeah, there might be a particular order for a particular reason that only the archivist knows, that we just need to keep them in order. As you look through the folder of documents, keep them in the order that they are in the folder. They may not seem like they're in any kind of order to you, and maybe they're not, but just being respectful and keeping them the way that it was brought to you. If you rearrange the documents in these folders, it may make it harder work for the next researcher that comes along behind you, or it may make work for the archivist that they have to go back and reorder everything. And I'm particularly thinking of things that are in like a chronological order. Don't leave your area messy. You might find this one kind of funny, but I have been a researcher and gone to many a research desk and found that someone had left a lot of their trash or left the area messy. And so then I had to clean it up before I could even get started. And so when you're finished, just make sure there's nothing there that's messy, trash, or anything. And also make sure you're not leaving anything. That's another thing to look for. Look through the area where you've been researching and make sure you're not leaving anything. Don't leave behind any copies, record copies. I don't know how many times genealogists have left my archive and they left their copies right there on the table. And so a lot of times I didn't have contact information to try to get in touch with them to say, hey, these are your copies. You don't want to pay for copies and then leave them. Also leave your table and research area clean and ready for the next researcher. Like I said, I've done that. I've come up to the table and there's crumpled up paper and pencils and things that were left there, and I had to clean it up for myself. So those are the do's and don'ts. And so I always like to tell people to remember it's not all online. Visit or contact an archive today. Thank you so much for attending my presentation. You can visit my blog, A Genealogist in the Archives. The link is also in the handout. And then I'm on Facebook too. So look for me, just go to Facebook and look for The Archive Lady and like my page. And email me. I love getting emails from those that have attended my presentations. Please ask questions about researching on archives or anything about Tennessee research. I'll be glad to answer it. And so there's my email address. It's also on the handout. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Nancy for any questions.
Well, thank you, Melissa. It's a wonderful, wonderful presentation. I've attended a lot of archives and you've brought up several points that I had not even considered. So thank you very, very much. And I want to just remind everybody, if you were going to go to our website to get the handout, it is under Melissa's explanation of her, where you would have registered for this seminar. And it will be up until midnight tonight. And the handout is there, where you can click on it and download it. But remember, it will disappear as the day ends tonight at midnight. So if you were planning to go there, do it before midnight. And Melissa also does have her website and her blog address at the top of her handout. So thanks, Melissa. We had one question came in that I thought was really important, and she wanted to know how archives handle backpacks and pens and coats. And you kind of addressed that with the locker situation, but you didn't say anything about computers, cameras, or phones. Can you address that?
Sure, yeah. Any electronics, and I think I did have a slide talked about iPhones, but any electronics, you need to make sure before you get there what they accept or don't accept, and don't think that because one archives accepts it that the next one you go to is going to either. Every archive is different, their rules are different, and so just send them an email or look on their website to see if they have anything on their website, but talk to a person either by email or by phone and go over with them. This is what I want to bring in. Can I bring this in? And they should be able to tell you.
Okay. I was going to ask you about your blog, but you've already addressed that. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to visiting you and your blog. You also mentioned you mentioned Genealogy Bargain. Can you address what that is for our members?
Genealogy Bargains, if you'll Google it, you'll find it. But Genealogy Bargains is actually a website, and it's a business, a company run by Thomas McKenty. If anyone has ever heard of Thomas McKenty, that is his website. And so I have partnered with him over the last 3 years and have done my column, the Archive Lady column, with him. And so that's what Genealogy Bargains is. He offers tells you about the different bargains that are out there. He also has, and I think you can find that on his website, he offers a lot of free cheat sheets, they call them. And so you might go there and find those there. But yeah, it's operated by Thomas McKenty. He and I are good friends, and that's where my column is.
So just Google Genealogy Bargain.
Yes, it'll be the first thing that comes up.
Okay. Since I really don't have, do you have a what to bring checklist? I bet you do.
I do not. I actually do not. But I tell you what, if you go to Genealogy Bargains, I bet you he's got a cheat sheet about something like that. If you look on his, where you find that.
And then somebody wanted you to redisplay this slide right before you listed your email. It has the blog address. And I think we can just tell them it is, there's the address for Genealogy Bargains in the chat. And then her blog address is at the top of the handout. If you just look under the title, you'll find her blog address. I just want to address the fact that it's interesting that at a board meeting we had just prior to Melissa's presentation today, our society is considering digitizing. We have a small private library that we
Mhm.
house in a family history, an LDS church who's allowed
Okay.
us to use a room. And we have a 4-drawer file cabinet with those family files in it. Legally, can we digitize those files without, I'm tapping into your archive expertise. Can we digitize those family files without asking them? Do you know?
I would have to know and what auspices were they donated. Did you, because many times in an archives, what happens is anything that's donated, we get someone to sign what's called a deed of gift. And a
Oh.
deed of gift is a legal document where the person who's donating has handed over all ownership and copyright to the archive. And so I don't know what you all have done, or if you've just collected these or what. If you may not even be able to know who gave them.
I think they
Right.
just had members and asked them to turn in family pedigree charts and any information on their family, and we put them in a manila folder and
Yeah.
put it in the
Best
file
bet
folder.
is to ask a local attorney, just for their advice. And then the next thing I would say is that digitize them and then, ask forgiveness later and then take it down if someone says take it down. That's the only thing I could,
We have
if all
several
else
members who have,
fails.
we have several who have passed away, and of course their families
Right.
just donated. So I would
Right.
think that would be clear
Yeah.
to post in archive and
Yeah.
pull out the items. What else was I going to issue? I think that's about it. And I don't see any other than positive comments, Melissa. Fabulous
Good.
presentation. So many great tips. One person's planning a 3 to 4 month trip, or planning in 3 to 4 months a trip. And this has been invaluable for her or him.
Great.
And so I want to thank you so much. Very, very good presentation and very valuable. I think we all are looking forward to getting out and going to archives and courthouses and libraries. And I'm anxious to go visit that new Tennessee Archive and State Library. Didn't know they had just opened up.
Absolutely.
So-
It's amazing. And there's a lot of interactive, it's state of the art. And so I would encourage everyone, if they can make a trip to Tennessee, to come on down and go to it.
Okay, and somebody told me I should probably ask Allen County Library about archiving material. I'm sure they're pretty
Sure.
good at it.
Oh, yes,
too.
they will give you some great advice.
So anyways, thank you, Melissa, and thank you everybody for attending today. Make sure you check our website, www.kylgs.org. It's been posted on the chat, and you can Google it also and look for our last 2 events that we're having here for 2021. And then we're going to have a whole slate of new activities for 2022. And Melissa, we'll have to have you come back again. I don't know if we'll get you next year because we've started, but we will definitely be plugging in and looking at your list of presentations. And thank you so much for attending today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'll be glad to come back next year. Just let me know.
Okay. And thank you everybody for coming.